Welcome, everyone, to Boost Pickup. I am your host, Vaudable, and joining me on the broadcast today is Mitz. Is that how you pronounce your tag? You are the manager of Afterthought. Great to have you here for the first half of the broadcast. But let's just get right into everything, not even have to really warm anyone up, just get into the nitty-gritty. What is your role for Afterthought? We know you're a manager, but do you also do coaching, or do you just do anything that comes to trying to get this team in the best shape as possible?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Vod. I'd say like the best way to describe what I do is I'm kind of like a jack of all trades. So just I'm kind of just there just for, whatever I'm needed help with. I mean, actually probably like the one thing I don't do a lot of, which is typically what managers usually do is scrims. I usually leave the scrims up to Shock. He usually takes care of all that, but because they usually just know who they like to play, and the players don't mind setting that up. But I actually do a ton of behind the scenes stuff. I handle PR, I handle social media, and most importantly, I'll handle representation. So for example, things like this, or representing to a potential org, or really just handling talks, or just being like that professional medium kind of in between the players and the team. Just kind of being like a presence there, and really just helping out in any way I can is kind of my job.
Awesome. So you kind of help the team get to the next level in terms of people trying to qualify for the Rival Series, people who have been in the Rival Series looking to get to the RLCS and propel them as far forward as you guys can manage. And also, if I'm not incorrect on this, you are the brother of Shock, is that correct?
Yeah, Shock is my younger brother as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah, that's the relation there.
So how did this team of Afterthought, way back in the beginning, before, I think it was season 6 when you guys were trying to qualify the first time for the Rival Series, come to be?
Yeah, so Shock was actually pretty distressed about it at first. He had a team together with Austin and T. Carell. I think that was I don't remember the exact season number. I think he said it was going into 6, so I think that was the summer of 2018. But he had a team with them. They ended up deciding to not go with him, so he was kind of panicking for a team at the time, and he actually ended up coming together with Hoxer and Normal Times, and he came up with the team in Afterthought. I don't know the exact, so I didn't make the name, he did. I don't know what the exact inspiration for it was. I think it might have been because he got dropped and he was saying he was an afterthought, kind of
gotcha.
But so kind of I don't know. It's not the most positive way to think about it, but I think the team has grown to be a really positive light in the community. But aside from that, so the team ended up forming there with Hoxer and Normal Times, and then they were, I think, 1 game away from making the Rival Series that season, and they lost to Splice. So, because Splice made the Rival Series that season, they were 1 game away. I think Normal Times quit the game after that. I think he's back now.
Yeah, I haven't seen Normal Times in a while, so I think that's an solid assessment of what might have happened in that situation.
I mean, he's kind of older too. I think he's more near our age. I think he's 23, 24. So I think he's all right. I'm gonna try other things, but but Shock and Hoxer ended up staying teamed, and they were trying out people. So that was kind of the beginning of Afterthought, and really what was the main core for what I like to call Afterthought 1.0. That was kind of Shock, Hoxer, and then kind of whoever was they went through a decent amount of thirds, but that was kind of the start of it all.
Gotcha. So eventually they weren't able to qualify for the Rival Series in season 6. Normal Times leaves. Then they're trying to figure out who else is going to fit in well for this roster. And during that time, there was an interesting off-season event that was going on. It was the Renegade Cup monthlies that were happening. And what was the roster that was representing Afterthought at this time? It was a lot different than an event that happened before the finals, was WSOE, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, so I remember the Renegade Cup was interesting because we actually weren't even sure what the roster was half the time. But what we do know for sure is that it was Shock and Hoxer, and like I said, we just went through a ton of thirds. But what ended up happening is we qualified because there was multiple times. I think we played with Roldiz as our third. We played with I don't even remember what what one of the other thirds we played with, but I know the other guy we played with was Zolhe, and Zolhe is actually who we ended up winning the monthly, because the Renegade Cup was the 4 monthlies and then the final, and we ended up winning because we had like a different roster for the first 2 months, and then the third month is what we won it with Zolhe, and then we ended up playing the championship with him, Hoxer, and Shock, which actually came after the whole roster drama. But I know we'll get to that. But so we ended up winning the monthly and winning the final tournament against Sway with Zolhe and Hoxer with Shock.
Yeah, so that was an incredible run you guys made during the off season, trying to really prove yourselves worthy of the Rivals Series. But let's talk about, before even going into that final event and talking about how the team performed there, the WSOE qualifiers that you guys were able to somehow tear through. Just looking at some of the teams that they beat, for those who aren't familiar with the WSOE event, I think it's like the World Series of Esports. It was the first, I believe, Rocket League event that they did. And you guys beat Bread 3-0. You managed to scrape by against Rogue after reverse sweeping them. Beat Nefarious, who also beat Perfect Storm. Perfect Storm was a team that had the likes of Chrome and Jacob and Joro, which was an interesting roster. And then, fortunately, didn't beat G2, but you beat Perfect Storm in the losers finals, qualified for this massive event. What did it feel like for the guys being in that atmosphere when they were able to qualify for a major, let alone not even qualifying for the Rival Series the previous season?
Yeah, so one of the things I remember is I got the privilege of being under I was under the same roof at that time as my brother. We happened to be in the same spot, and I was kind of like leaving him alone. He was off playing his qualifier, and I just, like, the whole house is just like he just lights up the whole house. He's like screaming, he's going crazy. He was super happy, man. I mean, I was really happy for him. It was nice for me too, because this is actually when my kind of like managership, it kind of started with the team. And I'll kind of describe that in a second, but like the atmosphere was electric. It was really cool for him to, because that was really the team's first ever like major accomplishment in my opinion. They barely came up a game short on RLRS the previous season with Hoxer normal times, and then they pick up Mist, who they played with for the WSOE qualifier, and who they actually went to LAN with. So this was a big moment for all three of them. It was their first major LAN. At the time, none of them were in RLRS yet, either. So it was a pretty big deal for everyone, and the excitement was off the charts for sure.
So you said this was around the time that you kind of fell into the manager role for this team. How did that come to be?
Yeah, so it was really with I had been helping out with things kind of like on the side and just kind of being like guidance for my brother just in general. I run my own freelance business. I'm a professional videographer. That's my full-time job. So I have experience with contracts and kind of like managing and just kind of like all around like businessy stuff as well. So I was kind of just helping him out behind the scenes, and then it kind of, when they actually qualified for WC, it was kind of like, it was very frantic. So team didn't have a logo, team did not have jerseys, so we were kind of in a tough spot. And if I remember correctly, I think we only had like 2 weeks by the time between
something like that.
It was maybe even less than that. It was less than 2 weeks. So between the time of qualifying and then the actual time of getting our flights booked and everything, and top all that. I mean, for WSOE, first of all, there's tons of paperwork to handle. I call it paperwork. It's all digital nowadays, but it was contracts. It was sorting out money, like bank accounts, and then it was scheduling flights. And I know WSOE also needed, or I guess they all need this for all major lands, but because at the time Hoxer and Mist were under 18 years old, so they needed like a guardian with them. So it was sorting out those flights and then getting the hotels and everything together. So they not only needed a coordinator with that, but they also needed a logo and a jersey. So what I kind of did was I'm not, like I said, I'm a videographer, but I kind of
pick up those skills while
yeah,
doing
yeah,
that kind of work. I'm
yeah.
familiar with it too.
Yeah, so just kind of like I'm like, all right, well, I'm not a graphic designer, but I might as well give it a shot here. But that same night, whipped up the original Afterthought logo for them, and then I went through a company called Aweo, who actually got jerseys delivered to us in like 4 days from Germany. So we had those in time.
Yeah, I was wondering like how you guys got those so quickly, because as soon as you guys qualified to the actual event, like no one usually sees that kind of turnaround time.
Yeah, honestly, shout out to Aweo. They are a fantastic site. Their support was huge. We called them. We're like, hey, we need jerseys in like a week, man. And they're like, our headquarters in Germany, but we'll express ship them to you. We just had to pay a bit extra for the express shipping, but their customer service was, it was great. And then they were able to get those to us in time, and the quality was really good too. We were really happy with how those turned out for, how quickly we had to throw those together. And it was also really cool for me, like I said, I'm not a graphic designer, but to see I was pretty happy with the logo I cooked up, and then to see it on the jerseys just like a week or two later at LAN was pretty cool. But that's kind of how that all came to fruition, with me actually becoming the official manager of the team.
So the roster that you guys had for this event, different than the one for the Renegade Cup. Shock, Hoxer, obviously the two that you said have stayed since that first time qualifying for the Rival Series. And then they had Mist as well. With this roster, it's just insane to look back at the performance, whereas they might not have thought it was the greatest. If those of you who have not seen the event, they came fourth out of their group. They did beat the Chiefs 3-1. Barely lost to Flipside, who ended up winning the event.
That was a series.
In 4 overtimes. Yeah. And the games that they won and lost by were all by 1 goal games, so they could have beaten the champions of WSOE.
Right.
Were they kind of disheartened after that, or did you try to keep them going and motivated going into their last few series?
Yes, that's a really good question. It's cool that you recognize that. The team was I remember that series with Flipside specifically. It was a Game 5 OT. It was a best of 5, and it was a Game 5. And they lost by that one goal in OT. And like you said, Flipside went on to win it, but we didn't know that at the time. But it was just which kind of afterwards it settles it. You're like, oh, we lost Game 5 OT to the team that won the whole thing, but they didn't know at the time. They were pretty disheartened after that loss. And I remember it was like lunch break right after that, and I was pretty tired because I was there was like a viewership room off to the side that I was in, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, I was really cheering on that series. That was really stressful, but because I'm always definitely a number one fan for the team, and not only the manager but a number one fan. But the team was pretty disheartened, and I remember we were also trying to schedule a couple of interviews during that time, and they weren't feeling up for it. But my main goal was really just to kind of keep the morale of the team up. Like I said, I always just kind of see myself fit in where I was needed. So just helping everyone feel good about it and telling them that they played a great series. I'm like, hey guys, you qualified and you're here playing on the biggest stage against the best teams in the world. They have tons of experience. The fact, what you're doing here is really just nothing short of incredible. Yeah, it's incredible, and at the end of the day, I'm like, no matter what happens here, you guys put yourself on the map. This may be the first time people are hearing your name, but it's not going to be the last.
So when they finally got a series win after losing to Cloud9 and Flipside, 2 amazing teams in their own right, and that have storied history in Rocket League, beating. Maybe it's an OCE team might not feel like the greatest victory, but the best OCE team at the time. What were kind of the thoughts after that series?
Yeah, so personally, I was pretty excited. I was like, hey guys, this is your first major LAN win. I think at the time they were still a little beaten up over the Flipside loss, and
gotcha.
Yeah, and just the how competitive these guys are and the expectations they bring into everything, and they really were disappointed for the rest of the day. But I know deep down, and coming off it on the next day, I hey, we won a series. We won a series at our first major LAN, and I kind of tried to help them recognize that. So overall, I think that was a very crowning achievement for them. And the Chiefs were really no joke. So I know I was happy about it. I know they were happy about it in the long run.
So after that event, on the timeline of getting from the beginning of Afterthought till now, we had not missed being on the roster, but for the Renegade Cup Finals, we had the roster of, you mentioned it before, it was Hoxer, Shock, and Zol with Fire as the sub for that one. Mm-hmm. Was there kind of a different mentality going to this after qualifying for WSOE, like having that performance, beating two RLCS quality teams in Bread and in Rogue to qualify as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about like the roster drama first, but actually,
we can talk about that after, like kind of the whole lead up to the roster drama, basically.
Right, yeah, because the roster drama happened before the finals of the Renegade Cup, which is why I was saying it was. But yeah, I mean, I could. What would you rather have me do? Which one do you want me to talk about first?
Do the drama then if it happened before. I was in the thought that it was actually afterwards that it happened.
No, yeah, it was actually before. Yeah, I only remember this because I remember the whole sequence of events. But
gotcha.
It's all so confusing and jumbling. I know, but
yeah.
So basically, what happened is that Mist and Hoxer decided to drop Shock. This was and this was after they decided the team for all RS, and then this was before the Renegade Cup Finals. Which had my brother pretty broken up. He, the whole situation. There's a lot of drama going on, all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff flying around, and I was trying to manage as much as possible. Like the second I heard about it, I wasn't really given any notification beforehand, and it was kind of just dropped as a surprise to all of us. It was just kind of those two talking about it, but Shock got dropped, and then. Renegade Cup monthly, not the monthly, but the Renegade Cup final, comes around, and you can't use. I think you have to use two of the three same people. So or maybe you have to use the exact same roster.
You have to use the exact same roster that qualified for it. So if they played with like a different one in the first two, like you guys said you did, you can't play with that one. Unfortunately, I was actually hosting that one, and it was insane to see. Even with all this drama going on, that you guys still were able to win it out, beat TFB. Obviously, that was a bit of a controversial matchup there. Beat the dudes, and then you beat Sway twice. Best of 7, you guys managed to beat them 4-3 all the way to Game 7. Like, was Shock feeling a little bit better about not really being dropped with the whole situation, that he didn't deserve it to happen and knew he's good enough to beat a lot of these teams that he'll be playing against for the Rival Series qualifiers?
Yeah, so I don't remember how much buffer time was in between the actual, like him being dropped and then the actual Renegade Cup final. But I remember he was still pretty torn up about it, and there's a lot of things swirling around, and like he wasn't even sure if he wanted to play with Hoxer at the time. I remember, as I've mentioned, Hoxer and him have been playing together for quite a bit longer than they've been playing with Mist, and they had developed a bit of a friendship over that time period. So they were able to make amends, luckily, and there were still some things some on the water, but fortunately they were kind of able to pull it together. I wasn't sure how well they do. I thought, like, man, comms must be awkward, to my surprise, as well as your own, as you mentioned, they were really able to pull together and beat a really good team, which was Sway at the time. So I think there was a lot of confidence from him, though, in his actual own playing, coming off, being able to beat the Chiefs and compete at the highest level, not only qualifying for WSOE, but then compete at a high level once they're actually there. Even though they only won one series, it was just so competitive. Every other series, a lot of them were seriously winnable. So I think this was still a lot of confidence coming off of, because I remember at the time before they dropped him, I was thinking it. I know they were thinking it. I thought that team had a really good shot at not only making RS, and then making RLCS. As you can see, Mist and Hoxer just went on to make RLCS. So I knew it at the time. I'm like, based on what I've seen from these guys, I'm like, they're special, So I think that was a lot of confidence from them coming off that. I think Zolhe was just a confident player in his own at the time also. So I think that all kind of winded together into what ended up being a Renegade Cup final victory.
Awesome. So Renegade Cup final happens. After that, the team disbands, I'm assuming, at that point. And then Fast forward a little bit to what I'm going to call a little bit of a pickup roster because I need to get the story from you. How did Hato and Tyler join Shock to try and qualify and eventually qualify for the Rival Series of Season 7?
Yeah, so this was all kind of during that time. It's all kind of in the same time frame. Like, I think so. The Renegade Cup Finals must have happened just a little bit before roster lock, because I knew Zolhe was trying with a different team. So, so you definitely could have defined that Renegade Cup Final team as a pickup team since no one was technically teamed for the RLRS.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So Ty and Hato were teamed with Roldiz at the time, and Mist and Hoxer convinced him to come over and play with them. So that left Ty and Hato.
Okay.
Yeah, that left Ty and so that's now what you know is the Birds and the Bees. So that left Ty and Hato kind of hanging. They needed a third. So just by kind of just what had been falling into everyone's lap, Shock was like, hey, like, you need a guy. I need a team. There wasn't really any other clear options. I think my brother's actually thinking about teaming with Seabass and Jacob at the time, but I don't think the scrims went too well. But they ended up going with just Ty and Hato, and also my brother's like, hey, I kind of I sympathize with them. They just had their guy leave, and my two guys just dropped me. So like, hey, let's make a team. It kind of seems right. And I think we should have a pretty good shot at this thing. So that's kind of how like the Afterthought 2.0, as I call it, kind of rolled around.
Awesome. So we saw Afterthought 2.0 occur with Hato, Ty, Shock, and Dino being the sub. He's a great guy all around. Met him a few times in Texas. But what was it like having to qualify at the same time as the team that kind of dropped him as well? Did it mess with the mindset of this roster, especially because Hato and Tyler also had to go with an issue or go through an issue with Roldiz being picked up by Birds and the Bees?
Yeah, so there was definitely a pickup is definitely a great word for it, because there is definitely kind of that feeling in the atmosphere, like this was a team that more just kind of fell together rather than was chosen. Not that they weren't, not that there was anything bad in the air, but so some problems definitely arose because of it. There was definitely just some issues with who's going for what ball, communication and comms, people not saying things when they're supposed to, or people kind of talking behind the back of others. Like it was definitely a pickup team in its true nature. So there was definitely some problems that arise from it. And actually this is kind of where I stepped in. I actually I was helping the team through a lot of that, and obviously no one was at fault or to blame for any of it. It was just the nature of the situation, everyone just kind of got thrown together, and there were some issues because of it. But I try to help the team as much as I can. All three guys, all they did was want to win. They had a great run through the initial bracket, and unfortunately the actual season of RLRS didn't turn out too great.
Let's take a pause there for a second and talk about the actual bracket. It's good. We got to talk about this team that Afterthought managed to beat before qualifying for the Rival Series. We're talking about Sway Esports. A lot of people expect them to just glide on into the Rival Series. Mm-hmm. Were there nerves going into that final qualifying series for the Afterthought boys?
Yeah, so I think everyone was definitely pretty nervous. I know Ty shared with me that he was pretty nervous himself. I don't think my brother actually gets too nervous. I think he said this was one of the first times he ever did. He said game one he was kind of nervous, but I think as these players kind of sink into the matches, like by game 2 or 3, they're usually just kind of focused, and it's all just kind of second nature coming in. But I think there's definitely an element of nerves to it. It was like, hey, and there's also some doubt. Like, this is a pickup team. We've barely been able to scrim. Our scrim results aren't too great. We're having some internal issues. Like there's a lot of questions in the air about how it's going to go down. But there's definitely a lot of nerves going in that matchup. I think they were able to sink him by the end. We ended up winning that series against Sway miraculously. I was going crazy for that.
Well, so many people were because of the story of what happened to Shock
exactly.
and the other Afterthought players before getting to this moment. Sway Esports, like, if anyone was living under a rock, you still would have heard of how good the Sway Esports roster was going into this. They got the number 1 seed above all these other teams that were quite amazing in their own right, and they still did not manage to qualify during that, but that's not really what matters. What matters about this is Afterthought were the first ones to kind of lead them to their downfall, qualified for the rival series. And let's talk about how they performed. You were saying obviously not the greatest, but do you think it was still a solid performance from those boys based on the circumstances that led them into the rival series?
Yeah, I was you're talking about Afterthought, right? Not Sway. You're asking.
Yeah, Afterthought.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Sway did not get into the rival.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. So
unfortunately,
right. Yeah. So Afterthought. I was actually really shocked with how well they played. Not shocked as in like, oh, I'm surprised these players played well. Obviously, they're all great players. It's just more of like, there's definitely some questions in the air, like I said, and to see them all bring it together and really give a full team effort. All 3 of them played great. Specifically, I thought Hato he had the run of his life in that bracket. So, I was really impressed with the team, and I was really happy they were able to pull it together. It was definitely a big moment because especially, and it felt good for my brother too, because he thought he was going to be almost a shoo-in for LRS with Hawks and Mist, and with how well they were playing, and then being dropped and not even sure if he was going to end up on a team that would even be able to qualify. He was really upset about it. So, being able to kind of like triumphantly come up through the bracket, with this pickup team and that kind of fallen together, and I know everyone was really happy about it because their sentiments were similar as well, Ty and Hato, because Raul left or rolled his left. So, I know overall it was a great feeling.
Awesome. So they felt good. They might not have placed top 4, so they could have stuck around. But I feel like based on this roster, even if they made top 4, do you feel they would have still stuck together or maybe went different ways and tried to test the waters with different rosters?
Yeah, I definitely think even if they made top 4, the roster would have split no matter what. And, not because there was bad blood or anything, or not
more chemistry issues.
It was just a lot of chemistry issues with the team. I spent most of the rival series trying to figure it out with them and trying to make it, as best as possible. I'm like, hey guys, I know you may not get top 4 at this point, but it's like, every game you win, it could be, more money, or, it could really just mean, better placement and it looks better. But, really just trying to help them through the whole thing and trying to figure out the chemistry issues. But I think it was just inevitable that no matter where the team placed, unless they made RLCS, I think the team was going to disband. So, I think everyone just wanted to kind of go their separate ways and try something else.
Gotcha. So go separate ways. Then eventually we see a different roster kind of show up for the DreamHack Dallas qualifiers. How did this roster come to be? And actually, no, it's the same roster. Excuse me. But we did were they just wanting to try it out and just see how they played and just go to the event itself just because it was close by to a few of the players, or?
Yeah, so we actually had some issues with this. They actually qualified, all 3 of them, or not qualified, but they played in the qualifier.
Yeah.
And they didn't unfortunately qualify, but they decided to go and play while the rival series was still young. Mm-hmm. So this was before, like, no one was sure if the team was really going to break it off or how bad the chemistry issues were going to be.
Yeah, because the qualifiers were so long ago, too.
Right, yeah. So I just remember at the time being that it was still early on in the rival series. So the team, I was like, hey, like, guys, like, do we want to try Dallas? Like, I think it, I'm not sure if you guys would want to stay team, but, I think it looks good for the Afterthought image, and it looks good for you guys as players just to get out there, especially if the funds are available. So since we didn't qualify, what ended up happening was, I know Hato was originally supposed to go, but he had some conflicts. So we ended up, luckily Dino was going anyways. And so Dino is who we actually played with, who was our sub at the time, is who we played with at the event. So that's kind of like, but even though the team knew they were going to break it off, I think Dallas was just kind of like a wind down for that.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so it was kind of what led to the inevitable departure of Ty from the roster.
Right.
And still a fun event to participate at, especially because of how amazing the atmosphere was, especially with the crowd that we saw.
Yeah.
The crowd was great for that one.
It was crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's fast forward even further to the qualifiers or before the qualifiers even for DreamHack Montreal. How did this roster form specifically, picking up Sathu and First Killer as well? First Killer still not old enough to play in the Rival Series or RLCS, but
Right.
taking a chance for the qualifiers themselves? Was it just another pickup team of chance, or was Shock and Sathu even trying to make a run at things?
Yeah. So, actually, me and Shock had talked to Sathu a ton actually at DreamHack Dallas. We're pretty friendly, and Sathy's a great guy. So I know we were talking a lot, and this was before Space Station had decided to drop him. So I remember just kind of being on good terms and being friendly. Sathu, I think once he got dropped, he tried quite a few things. I know I'm not sure what offers he had, what was on the table. I know he was trying some stuff around, but what ended up happening was he kind of fell back, and he's like, all right, it looks like my only option at this point is to try and get the best team I can for play-ins. And I know Sathy at this time was even considering, I know he said he was considering retiring. So he was on the fence if he even wanted to do play-ins, or maybe if he just wanted to stream and just kind of play for fun after that. But obviously now, he's not, he's going to play in play-ins. But so him and my brother start talking, and they decide they want to try things out. This was also around the same time that my brother achieved rank S. So, with Shock in rank S, and then, Sathy was still in rank S. They thought they had a pretty good shot at, this was even before plans. We're talking about DreamHack Montreal qualifiers right now. So, so they wanted to form a squad, and, with First Killer in rank S at the time as well, they thought it'd be a great idea to just try things out together. Obviously First Killer, too young to play in the Rival Series, but he was at DreamHack Dallas with U90.
True.
And so, because I think what DreamHack is 13 years old.
Yeah, it is, because we have Hawk playing at DreamHack Montreal for the Chiefs, and he's insane as well.
Is he young?
Yeah, he's 13 years old, actually.
Wow, that's crazy. I wish I had this game when I was 13, man. I'd be pro right now, I
probably still wouldn't be pro, but maybe I'd be a little bit of a better caster. Who knows?
Yeah. So I think just it was everyone was together. They were playing a lot in rank S together, and they're like, hey, why don't we try things? In my opinion, First Killer is one of the best players in the game right now. I think he's going straight to RLCS once he is of age. But things in chemistry worked really well with them, and which eventually led to a great run through the bracket for the Montreal qualifiers.
Yeah, you guys beat RBG Esports, which was a solid roster at the time. They're still improving themselves and trying to find the best team. But Seabass, Rapid, and Aeon, that went all the way to 5 games. But afterwards, you guys beat Rogue 3-1. And then Space Station, the team that dropped Sathu.
Yeah.
How did that feel for the players to beat them to qualify in the upper bracket?
Yeah, I think it was probably a similar victory, especially for Sathu, that Shock felt when he didn't directly beat the Birds and the Bees in the Rival Series play-ins, but to make the Rival Series with Ty and Hato after being dropped from them, I think it was a similar kind of feeling, but maybe even more so for Sathu, because to come back and to be told by your old team that you don't fit in with the current meta and get dropped, and then and then beat them, So maybe he wasn't as off meta as they thought, but I think that was a great wake up call, and definitely a great victory for Sathu. But knowing Sathu, it's not really about bad blood or vengeance for him. I know, especially from talking to the guy, one of the best guys I know in the community, and he was just happy to make the qualifier at the end of the day. And his focus is on the current team he's on and being the best player he can be. So.
Yeah, and it was great because we had him on the show. He talked a little bit about that, but it's good to hear your perspective on the whole situation and how he actually joined the roster before the qualifiers themselves. So let's talk about someone else that recently joined the roster. You guys announced Dapper being picked up for the team. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I know Dapper's been trying things for the last couple seasons. I think last qualifiers he was running with Savvy and Bork, I believe, with triple commit, and unfortunately they didn't do so well.
Close.
Yeah, they were close. They weren't able to pull it through. And I know Dapper's been kind of in this place for a little bit now, where he has RLCS level skills. He is in rank S, and but he's been out. He's been out of the rival series in the RLCS for a season or two now. So so basically, him being a free agent at this point, I think he was really just looking for the best team to run with, and he's always trying out with tons of people, seeing what he can do. But I know, yeah, and I think Dapper actually played with. It's kind of funny how it all interconnects. I think Dapper was playing with U90, I believe, at DreamHack Dallas as well with that team with First Killer and Demo Cap. But yeah, it comes back around to us. Shock and Sathy are looking for a third because they know that they obviously can't play with First Killer because he's 14. So Dapper was the logical choice. He was best free agent out there, being rank S and having prior competitive experience that they were looking for. And I would say one of the most notable things, and what I directly heard from my brother, is that they fit really well with Dapper. Shock has had problems in the past where he can fall under the umbrella being a very defensive player, and kind of always being on defense, making the hard saves, but he actually loves to play best when he's on offense. He loves being a striker. If you ever seen him shoot the ball, I've never seen someone hit top right of the corner of the net like every time. Like he loves to shoot. So he's a great, really talented offensive player that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to see. So and he feels like with Stathu and Dapper when they were trying out, when they were scrimming, he feels like that was a team he really connected with well. He fit in well, and he feels like he was, most importantly, he was able to play the offensive role and kind of like the all-around, role that really encompasses all of his skills well on that team. And I think that's really how they came about. It was just kind of like a match made in heaven. They all felt really comfortable playing together, and like, hey, this is a team we can really run with.
He was like the perfect piece of the puzzle to complete the enigma of Afterthought. So great to see how you guys are finally able to find someone to try and make a run in the play-ins. Dapper, I know as a player himself, I feel like just from watching him, he hasn't really fit with many rosters based on his play style. So it's going to be great to see how he performs with your guys' team and going into those play-ins. But one thing that's interesting I wanted to talk about a little bit before we wrap this up for the interview is how difficult or maybe different is it preparing for two different rosters for two different kind of events? We have Dapper, Shock, and Sathu for the play-ins, and then we have First Killer with them for the DreamHack Montreal. That's going to be in like 2 weeks' time, I believe.
Yeah, so it's good you asked that, because definitely been a challenge for us as well. I think what the team has been primarily focused on, and this isn't out of neglect to Montreal or First Killer, but I think the team has definitely just been more focusing with Dapper, because that's kind of like the long run thing. And First Killer knows this, and I think he knows he's going to be in a good situation no matter what when he's 15. So I think he'll be okay. So he knows that the team's been kind of focusing with Dapper. Because it's kind of confusing, like we want to scrim with First Killer in practice for Montreal, but I think what they're doing is they're using First Killer and that team as an opportunity to just kind of show that, hey, we're still around and we still mean business at Montreal. They're gonna just do the best they can, and they're just kind of using it as overall practice against these best teams, and really just using it for experience purposes. And then scrimming with Dapper, is really, because I know with Dapper they're scrimming and they're playing in Dazzler skirmishes and they're scrimming other bubble teams and they're really making sure they're brushing up with him against these kind of like I said, the bubble teams and the teams that are on the cusp here, because actually there is a technique to not wanting to scrim the RLRS RLCS teams versus scrimming the bubble teams, because you want to scrim who you're going to be playing. So
yeah.
Because they often have different play styles and whatnot. But so I think the primary focus has been with Dapper and making sure that they're as ready as possible for the long-term goal, which is making play-ins, making RLRS, and then hopefully making a shot at RLCS.
So speaking of those play-ins that you guys are prepping for, great to see the kind of insight into the focus of maybe play-ins. So DreamHack Montreal makes sense to go for the long run, because DreamHack Montreal, just a one-off, going to be a great time all around to see that. But what are some of the competition that are looking that you guys are looking at when getting these scrims and trying to make sure you're as prepared as possible for the play-ins against these teams?
Yeah, so like I said, it's really just I've stressed this before. It's an important focus to scrim the bubble teams only. You just want to play who you're going to be playing at the end of the day. I know some people have different philosophies on that, and a lot of times they will they'll say I don't want to scrim the teams we're directly going to be playing in the bracket and all this kind of stuff. But I just think it's important to get practice against these teams. And one team that's really on my radar, I'm not even going to pretend to know all the names, because everyone just formed all the rosters and everything.
Pretty much, yeah.
As we know, everyone's been playing a Chinese fire drill with with all the rosters and everything. But I think Bull Send is probably definitely on my radar as one of the other top bubble teams. That is Stokely, Com, and Dino, who is actually the former Afterthought sub. And they're looking really good. They gave us a good run for our money when we played in Dazzler and Skirmish last week in finals. So I think they're on the radar to look out for sure. I was looking at Dazzler and Skirmish. I was looking at Paradox just one, but that's X-Splice, I believe, was already in. Yeah,
Paradox won, but another team that looked pretty solid on there was Poco Loco out of nowhere. Duck's been around for a while, so is Beast of Bonian, and then J-Pal. These are players who've been in the scene for some time, but never really kind of pushed the envelopes.
Yeah, they're all good players. They're all rank A players for what I know, but I know that J-Pow has been, and Duck, I think, have actually both been in rank X. So they're top bubble players, ready to give people a run for their money. And I think we're going to find that with a lot of these, especially with now 7 spots open in the RLRS. I mean, we saw rank A players make it last season with only 8 teams. I think we're really going to see these rank A bubble players kind of really start to show what they're made of and that they can compete at the highest level, and they're ready to make the rival series as well.
So final question before we end off this interview. It's been great having you on the show to kind of get your insight into the timeline of Afterthought.
Yeah.
For this new format with the 10 teams, how do you feel that's going to change the rival series from the league play standpoint?
Yeah, so I think it's much for the better for sure. I've been saying that there should be 10 teams for a while now. I also think there should be 10 teams in RLCS, but one step at a time. But I really like that they expanded upon the RLRS. I know some people were against it because they're like, there's not enough competition. Look at the difference between the bottom of RS and the bottom and the top of it. But I think what's also important is giving these players an opportunity, and giving these players an opportunity to grow, play on the biggest stage, and practice against these other top teams is what makes great players. So, I think it's great that they expanded to 10 teams, and I really love the fact that the top 4 get a chance at RLCS, because a lot of times the difference between top 4 and top 2 could just be 1 or even 2 series. So, I think it's important to give more opportunity and then let them prove it when it matters. So the fact that top 6 stay in is not only great news for the players, but it's also great news for prospective orgs. Because, a lot of times orgs are like, well, we're going to get into the game here, and then, we have half a shot at, getting out. We're gonna lose our spot in the RS or in RLCS. So I think it's not only great for the players, but it's going to be more confidence for orgs to enter the scene and start to participate because they know there's a greater chance that they'll stick around. This also gives a chance for players to evolve, not have to go through the mayhem that is play-ins every season. Gives them a little more chance to stay in. But yeah, I think this is a great step forward from Psyonix and the esports guys. I think overall it's just going to be a step in a positive direction. We're going to see a lot more competition, and we're going to see a lot more honesty in who deserves to be where and who gets to rank up. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, you can't really claim, it was just one time. There's going to be 2 days worth of promotion playoffs for people to try and qualify for RLCS. So it's not going to be all on one day. And also gives people more of a reason to try in every series for the rival series. Yeah, so it's not when we get to like the last 2 weeks, it's already been pretty much decided who the top 4 are going to be. And then others are just like, well, there's no reason to win this one because we're going to lose anyway. So going to see more competitive integrity will be great. Any final thoughts about Afterthought in general, maybe the future? And make sure to promote your social media and the Afterthought brand for those who might not be as familiar with it.
Yeah, so the future of Afterthought, obviously, really hope they make RLRS. I think they have a great shot this year with this roster, and I actually really hope the team turns into a legitimate org at some point. That would be the goal. Getting some sort of sponsorship or someone to pick us up would be great. Social medias, you can follow us on Twitter at AfterthoughtRL. No spaces, no underscores, just straight AfterthoughtRL. So if you want to stay up to date on the team and what's going on, what tournaments we're playing in. I know we didn't even talk about it. Afterthought's won the last 2 Astro 2v2s actually with Sathu and First Killer, and that was actually another instance where Sathu beat Space Station in the finals of this last one. So the team's looking really good. I'm really excited for the future, and if you want to stay up to date with us, follow us on Twitter, and you can see what we're playing and how the team's going about.
Awesome. I really appreciate you being on the show, man. It's been great to kind of dive in and get the inside thoughts on Afterthought. And hope to talk to you again in the future once you guys qualify for the Rival Series or even RLCS.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. Thanks for having me on, Vod.
No problem.
All right, bye.
Wow, what an amazing interview with Mits. That was just great to get all the insight. Took the majority of the show, so we're going to speed through the remainder of it. Not too much news going on this week, but we'll go into the RL Esports update. Obviously, we know who the official roster is for Veloce. We see Casio joining that one. He'll be joining that team. Most likely for the RLCS. Obviously, we have not seen any confirmation that they are going to be a part of it other than the players themselves pretty much saying it's going to happen. Gotta wait till it's official from Psyonix. RL Esports has to tweet it for us to see what's going on there, but we'll see what happens then. We also get more Jesse in RLCS. Now he's going to be the sub for Vitality. That'll be great to see. Hopefully he plays at least one series at some point. It's always a good meme, but great to see him still be a part of the scene, making great content as always, and hopefully he'll get some good experience there. Fortunately, there's some sad news that happened basically, I think an hour before the show last week. We didn't really get a chance to address it, but Drippe off EG back into the land down under, and unfortunately, we don't know what roster he'll be a part of yet. Most people are thinking the Chiefs because there is a spot open there, but we'll see what happens with him. Unfortunately, he was not able to find a spot in North America, so had to move back home. Speaking of OCE, we have a roster trade, I think the first of its kind. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Siki and Zen trading each other. Renegades trading Zen for Ground Zeroes. Siki to be on their team. Great to see the different roster changes in the offseason still happening right before the roster lock. I think it was a few days ago, and it's going to be interesting to see how those rosters compete. Speaking of some awesome rosters and the way that they're going to be trying to compete, not the greatest segue, but who really cares? I know Chamaco's in the chat. He's going to enjoy this one. We do see Kairos becoming a coach for Loki Esports. The first time we have really seen a coach be announced for one of these teams in South America. I could be mistaken on that, but great to see him being picked up by the organization to try and bring these players to their peak performance. He did work with a lot of other teams before. I think he worked with Nefarious in the past, but he updated his bio a little bit earlier on. Speaking of some bios that have been updated, Team Echo Zulu, we now have their full roster. Taz and his team will be looking strong, trying to go into the Rivals Series and do their best there. A team name that's been around and an organization that's been around, RLCS or Rival Series EU, for quite some time. So we'll see what happens there with that roster specifically. Another Rival Series roster that is preparing for those play-ins is the Juveniles, Calix, Blurry, and Breezy. A lot of people in Europe recognize these names. They've been around the scene for some time, and they are going to make a run at it, especially since there are now 10 spots going to be in the Rival Series, which will be amazing to see. Another team that we saw in the Rival Series talked about some of these players that we'll be seeing as well, but this time for the North American play-ins, it is Zolhe, Spuda, and Hato with Among Star. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know this. Spood salute to you guys, as we'll hopefully see them qualify for the Rival Series. Great team, but still need to see more performance from them. Hopefully they will be participating in those skirmishes. As well as the dudes, they've been a roster or a name more than anything in the Rival Series sphere for quite some time. Their official roster was announced: Furain, Ralph, Spider, and Rodoko. Great players. Ralph has been trying his best to get into the RLCS. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked out every so often, but still great to see them perform and hopefully qualify for the Rival Series. So many spots, 7 spots for people to try and qualify this season for North America. So a lot of opportunity for these teams, but there's a lot of great talent out there still able to qualify. Speaking of some great talent, we saw a lot of that this past weekend at the Rocket League Summit. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get an interview with anyone from the Rocket League Summit that was there this weekend. Most likely going to be trying to get some people for a pre-recorded one for next week, so stay tuned for that and make sure you follow. But Rocket League Summit, here's basically the bracket, except Frontline made it to the grand finals, then NRG ended up winning it at the end of the day. Great performances by a lot of these teams, great content, great community event, and the Duck Trophy was very interesting to see that would be the first one in quite some time that Garrett would raise, and the first one that this roster would raise as well, especially with Turbo. I mean, I feel like it just fits perfectly for this team. NRG coming in first, and then we see second place being Frontline, them keeping up the consistency from DreamHack Valencia with their performances. Now we kind of got to go into something we'll talk about for pretty much the remainder of the show, a few minutes, is the World Gaming Network Rocket League World Gaming Network North American Championship. It's a mouthful. It took me a few times to try and get that correct, but they're going to be having their $20,000 tournament, which is, I guess, a precursor to DreamHack Montreal. You can see the prize pool here, $10,000 for first place, pay trip, and a pass to DreamHack Montreal. They get invited there, but also a ton of money to be won for all these teams. You can see the Group A and Group B. Hopefully we have the graphic for that, but it is Noble, Bull Sand, as we had earlier on talk about, Upper 90 Esports, and a live qualifier winner at the Canada Fan Expo that is happening this weekend. And then Group B, we have Linked Up, which is a pretty solid team, Plot Twist, Frontline, and this is a different Frontline, by the way. This is an actual organization in North America, and RBG Esports. And then they'll be playing in the playoffs that'll be happening on this Sunday. It's going to be great to see how all these teams perform. A lot of people looking forward for Plot Twist, Mektos, Corrupted G, and Taroko, because Corrupted G recently got it added to that roster. So we'll have to see how he performs there, and if they'll be able to win it all and move on to DreamHack Montreal. Would be a great performance, and they already have a spot in the Rival Series for next season, so don't really have to worry about too much, but they're looking to prove themselves, especially after Corrupted getting dropped with the rest of his roster from Evil Geniuses. Now let's talk about some of these teams that have been preparing and the events that they've been preparing in. Really the only one that's been happening recently, the Skirmish Invitational by Dazzler, and he's been putting a lot of great work onto this. We have the first one that happened this week with Bull Stand winning that one. That was the team, again, Mitz was talking about, and they performed quite well for themselves. They were able to win it over Compadres. I believe that was a forfeit, unfortunately, there, but 3-0 across the board for this team. And then the next day, unfortunately, Bullsen did not perform as well as they could have. But Paradox, the team who was formerly Splice, they look pretty solid recently with the pickup of Shadow, so they're still looking strong and high and far above a lot of the other our rival series hopefuls. So a lot of great work being put on by people in the community, by these players, and by these organizations and teams. Hope to see a lot more at this weekend for WGN. We're going to be trying to get an interview with one of the casters. That'll be there this weekend. We'll see what happens with that. But that's all for the show. Got through it in the time that we needed necessary, and hope you all enjoyed and were refueled with some great boosts from Boost Pickup. I am Vaudible, your host of this show. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/UGC, as you'll be able to get all the VODs of this stuff there, and you'll be able to catch little snippets of each episode, so you can just watch what you care about, the interviews or maybe specific sections of what people have said. Also on Spotify and iTunes, Boost Pickup, listen to it. Hope you enjoy it as well if anyone has been listening to us this whole time. But thank you all for watching. I have been your host, Vaudible. We'll see you next week, Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and we hope you all have an amazing weekend of Rocket League ahead.